Hello everyone. Welcome to day 7 of our history class. We will continue theme 2 Kings, Farmers and Towns of our history textbook Themes in Indian History. In my previous lesson, I discussed about the new notion of kingships that had developed from 2nd century BCE. We saw the new dynasties establishing power in the Deccan and the western regions. We also studied about the ways in which these new kings claimed social status. We studied about the rural society and land grants that were given at this point of time with people from different backgrounds. In today's session, we move away from the villages to the towns and the trades. We shall shift our focus to the 4 pillars of the urban center. These were the new cities, the urban population, the trade that was going on, and kings and the coins. The main features of these ancient urban centers were the new cities. From 6th century BCE, new cities began to flourish. Most of these new cities were the capitals of the newly evolved Mahajanpads. These cities developed along the trade routes. For example, Patliputra flourished owing its location along the riverine route. Ujjain, if you look at the map, was located on the land route as a midway to the coastal area. Some cities like Pohar towards the southeastern India was a coastal town. Mathura began to develop as the cultural, commercial and political center. You can locate these places on the map on your screen. When we look at these towns, their locations and significance, we wonder about the people who lived in these towns. We wonder about their lives, their culture, their artifacts, and so on. Since these towns are inhabited in the present times, it is difficult to carry out excavations like we did in Harappan regions. The Harappan sites were already abandoned. It was easy to excavate there, but difficult to carry out excavations here. But the historians need to now limit themselves to the artifacts which were recovered here and there. These included ornaments, tools, weapons, vessels, figurines made of different material like gold, silver, bronze, glass, ivory, shell, terracotta, etc. Some fine pottery, also known as the northern blackware, which you can see on the extreme left corner of your screen, were recovered. These were dishes with fine glossy finish, probably used by the rich people. Another method adopted by historians to understand about the population of the town is by looking at the inscriptions. By 2nd century BCE, a number of votive inscriptions have been discovered from various cities. Votive inscriptions means those inscriptions that recorded gifts which were given to religious institutions. If you look at the extreme right side of the screen, you will see a picture of a sculpture. On the pedestal, if you zoom in and see, there is some kind of writing in Prakrit language. This inscription mentions a woman named Nagbiya, who was the wife of a goldsmith named Dharmaka, installed this image in a shrine. Earlier, we had studied about the land grant that was made by Prabhavati Gupta. That too was an example of the votive inscription. These votive inscriptions often mention the name, the designation, or the occupation of the donor. They give us information about the people who lived in towns like washerfolks, weavers, goldsmith, blacksmith, carpenters, potters, religious teachers, merchants, officials, and kings. Some inscriptions mentioned donations that were made by guilds or shrenis. You have already studied about these guild in class 10. These were like trade association of craft persons or merchants. They produced raw material, regulated production, procured raw material, and were responsible for marketing the finished goods. The historians thus conclude that the craft person used a range of metals and iron tools in order to make these growing demands of the urban population. One important feature of these towns was the continuous movement of people. From 6th century BCE, we see a large network of land and riverine routes extending in every direction of the subcontinent. Land route towards Central Asia expanded on one hand, while the other waterways provided trade opportunities towards east and the west. From Arabian Sea, traders could move towards North Africa and West Asia. And from Bay of Bengal, they could now move towards Southeast Asia and China. Rulers desired to control these routes so that they could charge a tax for the safe passage. These routes were often traversed by peddlers on foot or by merchants in caravans using different kind of animal carts. The travel was risky. Traders traveled by sea routes as well, though it was risky due to attacks by pirates or by the wrath of the sea, but also very profitable. The merchants who succeeded in these endeavors and became rich were called Masatavans in Tamil and Sethis or Satavahans in Prakrit language. These traders carried a wide range of goods from one place to another. Some goods like salt, grains, cloth, metal ores, stones, timber, medicinal plants, and spices were in great demand in the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire. These goods were transported via Arabian Sea to Mediterranean along the maritime Silk Route. This extensive trade was facilitated by the use of coins in the long distance trade from the rulers, and the chiefs benefited from it. The earliest coins were minted around the 6th century BCE. They were known as the punchmark coins. These coins were made of silver or copper. They were irregular in shape but had a standard weight of 56 grains or 32 ratis. Rati was a red color seed which was used to weigh these coins. A symbol was inscribed or punched on with the help of a die. They have been excavated from different sites throughout India. Historians try to identify the symbol on these coins with specific ruling dynasties, including the Mauryan Empire. They suggest that these were issued by kings and sometimes by bankers and townspeople as well. The coins underwent a change with the names and the images of the rulers from 2nd century BCE. They were issued by Indo-Greek rulers who began to come and settle in the northwestern part of the country. And these are the coins of the Indo-Greek images that you see on your screen. From 1st century Common Era, many gold coins were discovered in North India and Central Asia. These coins began to be issued by the Kushana rulers. They were identical to the coins issued by the Parthian rulers of Iran and Roman solidus that you studied about in class 11th. This widespread use of gold coin indicate the enormous value of transaction that was going on. The discovery of the Roman coins in South India indicates that even though it was not part of the Roman Empire, yet they had close trade connections with the Romans. From 1st century Common Era, coins were issued by different tribal communities like the Yodhyas who were settled in Punjab and Haryana region. Archaeologists excavated thousands of copper coins issued by them, pointing to the fact that they were active participants in the trade. The most spectacular gold coins were issued by the rulers of the Gupta Empire. They were excellent examples of purity of art. On one hand, of the coins were the images of the rulers, and on the other side held the images of gods and the goddesses. From 6th century Common Era, the finds of these coins began to taper off. The historians have given different reasons for it. Some feel that it was because at this time Roman Empire began to collapse, and due to that long distance trade declined, while others suggest that it was due to the emergence of new towns and new network of trades. Another probable explanation given by the historians is that the finds taper off mainly because they were in circulation and were not being hoarded. We have been studying how our major source of information till now was the inscription and the coins. Let us now see how the historians understood what was written in these inscriptions and who do they mention. In our first session of this theme, we had studied about James Prinsep and how he had deciphered Brahmi and Kharosti script. From the late 18th century, European scholars and the Indian Pandits worked backward from contemporary Bengali and Devanagari script, the script in which Hindi language is also written today. They compared the letters to their old specimen. These scholars had earlier assumed that the oldest inscriptions were written in Sanskrit, but later, after James Prinsep had deciphered Brahmi, that historians realized that the earlier script was in fact written in Prakrit and not in Sanskrit. In fact, most Ashokan script and inscriptions were written down in Brahmi. It was known as the mother of most of the modern Indian scripts. However, the decipherment of Kharosti was different. Here, the scholars used the script written on the coins that were found in the northwestern part of India. This territory was under the control of the Indo-Greek kings. These coins had the name of the Greek kings as well, which was written down in Greek as well as in Kharosti. The scholars who could read Greek compared the letters like Apollodotus, which is a letter which begins with A, and A was common both in the Kharosti script as well as in the Greek script. Likewise, they deciphered all the other letters. Prinsep now identified Kharosti script. Now it became easy to read longer Kharosti inscriptions. Even though the scripts were discovered, how did the historians understand the inscriptions? For this, the epigraphist, these are those people who study the inscriptions, and the historians worked together. They compared various inscriptions. In some of them, the name Ashok was not mentioned. Instead, a title like Piyadasi, which means beloved, or um, pleasant to behold, and Devapiyam, which actually means beloved of God, has been mentioned. In other scriptures, both the name Asok and the titles were also mentioned. Hence, the epigraphist examined the style of language, content, and the style. The epigraphist could now conclude that they were issued by the same ruler. But historians constantly need to assess the veracity of the statements made in these inscriptions. For instance, in one of the inscriptions, Ashok mentions that prior to him, no other king had any means to receive reports. This is not just possible. If you look at the extent of the empire, you can understand it cannot be accepted. The historians need to regularly check for the exaggeration or the reality. While studying these inscriptions, historians are often faced with dilemma. Were people illiterate? Were they literate? Did they know Prakrit language throughout the empire? Did someone really stop to read the inscriptions that were placed by the roadside? Did the traders stop to read these inscriptions? Some of these inscriptions reflect the pain of the king and a change in his attitude. But if we go deeper, we see that none of these painful inscriptions are found in Orissa, where the Battle of Kalinga had actually taken place. And that was the reason for the pain and the plight of the emperor. It leaves the historians guessing. Was it too painful for Ashok to address the issue? That is why no inscriptions in Kalinga mention his transformation. Besides these, there are some technical limitations which the epigraphist face while studying these inscriptions. In some cases, the letters were faintly engraved, and it was difficult for epigraphists to reconstruct the words. Also, sometimes the inscriptions were damaged or the letters were missing, altering the meaning of the word altogether. Another problem is that over a period of time, the meaning of the word underwent a change. We need to remember that not all inscriptions have been deciphered and were translated. Lastly, we should remember that not everything was recorded in the inscriptions. These inscriptions project the perception of the person who had ordered them. We need to remember that epigraphy alone could not help us to fully understand and reconstruct history. We need to constantly corroborate our information with other sources. With this, we end today's class. We shall meet again tomorrow. But please do not forget to watch the links which I forwarded to you as your assignment. See you again tomorrow, same time.